Hello and welcome to the Green Voice Podcast. I'm Grant Ervin, your host with S&B USA, coming to you from the Center for Media Innovation at Point Park University. We have Wayne Gaines on controls here. I'm sitting here in the question seat, and then we got Nick Bonarrigo from Carmeuse. Nick, how you doing today?
I'm doing great this morning. How are you?
Awesome. Doing well, man. It's
Great.
good to see you.
Yeah.
Second tour of duty here on the Green Voice.
Yep,
so
absolutely.
We're glad to have you back. Maybe just to kind of jump in a little bit, because I have a feeling you and I together we can go down rabbit holes and tangents.
For
but
sure.
Before we go too far down those rabbit holes and tangents, maybe just introduce yourself for the audience and then tell us a little bit about Carmeuse.
It's a great idea. So Nick Bonarrigo, I am. I assume I should be looking at the camera. I'll give that a
It's
shot.
like
Hey.
natural.
Yeah. And, I am an attorney. I am the general counsel. The VP of Legal is my official title at Carmeuse. We're a mining company that is 160, I think, 2 years old at this point now.
162.
It's been a long time.
Just break-
164.
Just
I'll get
breaking it
trouble.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1860 we were founded.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
That's yeah.
Yeah, and it's been owned by the same family ever since. believe
For
it or
over
not.
160 years, the same family.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah. And our current chairman is a family member, and there's more generations to come. So, yeah, it's an interesting environment. We do limestone mining around the world. We have operations in the U.S., in Canada, we're in South America, all over Europe, Asia, Africa. I mean, we have business truly globally.
Wow, that's amazing. What's the history here in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, so this is, I think, through acquisitions, to be honest with you, before
Okay.
my time.
Okay,
so
sure.
There's no, so the family was, it's a Belgian family. They currently have
Carmeuse is the family name?
No.
Oh.
The Meuse part actually comes from the river, the
the
Meuse
River
River.
Meuse.
Yeah, and
Oh, interesting.
basically it has to do with the fact that the first quarry, I think, was located basically adjacent to that river, or on
Okay.
that river, basically.
Okay.
Is what that means. The family is a Colonnade family
Okay.
that owns it, but and I don't even know that the Carmeuse name was the first name. I think that came into, and then we have this beautiful swan logo. I don't know if
Yeah.
you
Does
guys
that-
can see that on the shirt.
Yeah, this is like Team
Yeah, we did.
Colors
It's
logo
great.
day.
But the swan, and there's actually some symbols in there, but the swan has not been there since the beginning. That's newer. And
Okay.
we recently had a trivia show. I probably shouldn't say this live, but I think our chairman was there, and I'm not sure he knew. And he's a family member. The year that they first started using the
Okay.
swan as the logo.
Okay.
But I like it. It's got
Yeah.
some good environmental pieces of it, and there's actually like some letters in there. There's a C, an M, and an S.
So it's those have a name. I forget.
I don't know what those are called either.
But so-
it does form
yeah.
the swan part
Okay.
of the Carmeuse.
So we have a swan. And I'm looking at it right now. So it's an S, a C, and an M.
Yes, and
Okay.
those all stand for things, and they're probably French words, and so I'm not going to even pretend
Okay.
like I know.
Okay, that's fine. I don't, I'm not doing French on Duolingo, so
please
I
don't.
wouldn't test you. I would, I'd give you a pass for sure.
Thank you.
So, so Pittsburgh history is through acquisitions.
Yes.
How long in Pittsburgh?
The company has to have been here for 30 plus years in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Headquartered. Yeah, it's an interesting one though. We're tucked away in Stanwix.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't even know that we exist there.
You're down at
And-
11 Stanwix, I think.
Yeah,
yeah.
And we've got 2 floors. We've got over 100 people in
Wow.
Pittsburgh, but honestly, so just to tell you sometimes how under the radar this company can fly. When I was with Reed Smith, the firm was actually doing quite a bit of work with Carmeuse. I was a client of the firm's.
Okay.
I did none of that work before I started at Carmeuse.
Really?
No.
And so had no introduction to the company through your legal career.
No. Honestly, I answered an advertisement, and then that's how I sort of got to know. Yeah, totally. It was a LinkedIn opportunity. I saw
Okay.
it, and I threw in a resume because it looked interesting. And
Yeah.
then, like literally within 4 months, I was there.
Now, in your legal background, what was the types of law that you practiced?
I was an M&A attorney for the most part. I did some
Okay.
securities work, financing stuff. So
Mergers and acquisitions.
mergers and acquisitions, buying companies, selling companies. I do that still at Carmeuse. I mean,
Okay.
we're an active, I would say, business development company. So we're constantly looking at new opportunities.
Okay.
Sometimes you sell pieces of your business as well. That's always something that anybody looks at
Yeah.
if you're trying to rationalize your business. So I've done a fair bit of that in the 7 years I've been here, believe it or not.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what are the types of companies you guys look to, like in that M&A space?
Sure. Well, obviously lime companies for us, although I will tell you that that's a very consolidated market for the most part.
Okay.
So at size anyway, it's consolidated. And so a lot of the acquisition targets we've looked at have been more in the construction side, so aggregate. Okay. So it's a different business segment, in part because the chemical composition of the stone doesn't matter for the application. So I don't want to say an easier part of the business, but it's definitely a different part of the business. There's less processing that happens. You effectively mine the stone, you grind it to a size, you sell it.
Boom.
Done.
Okay.
And that's probably the less, I would say, like carbon intensive piece of the business. The lime making piece is obviously a little bit more, because that's when you mine the stone and then you actually have to burn it to get it to the right chemical composition.
What are some of the uses of, I mean, I don't want to pretend like I'm a geological expert of any type, but like, what are some of those markets for lime and limestone and what
steel, the biggest one.
Okay. Which makes sense for Pittsburgh.
For sure.
Okay.
Water treatment. People probably don't think about this at all.
For filtration.
Yeah, they do. So we sell to various municipalities. It was actually funny because I was looking at a contract one day, and I didn't know this before, but Suffolk County, Long Island is I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say, but I just said it. But so they're a customer of ours, and I thought it was funny because I'm signing the contract, and I go, "Oh, Suffolk County, it's where my parents live." Yeah, and so I called my dad, and I just said, "You're welcome."
Welcome to the Carmeuse family.
Did you have a nice glass of clean water today? He's like, yeah, why? It's like, you're welcome.
How do you like me now,
Yeah,
Dad?
he's like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. So we do that. And then construction markets. For
roads.
Lime products can be used for soil stabilization, which is basically the sort of the first layer at the dirt level to sort of make sure that the ground isn't too wet. To lay down the aggregate and then the paving. So
it's like the first base of a road.
Probably for us, it's probably the first couple that we're involved in, because you've got the powder product that goes to like the drying, and then you've got the sort of the stone product that goes on top of that before you've got like the paving. Actually, there's parts of our business that'll do all three, but
interesting.
Yeah, of course.
And so with that, then you're always kind of looking for new markets, whether it's highway building, road construction, water filtration, metallurgical activities.
I think if you're a smart company, you're always looking for opportunities anyway. Yeah. Right. I mean, we're fortunate because as a private company, we don't have some of the same barriers. Look, there's also some unique things that public companies can do in terms of fundraising, but money typically isn't an issue for us. Yeah. For doing these deals, we're very strategic in the way we approach them, and so as a public company, you can do things oftentimes, faster and easier. As a private company, yeah.
Do those markets look the same globally, or
no?
When you're in, say, Africa or Europe, or it's different?
Yeah, no. I think some of it is similar. There are certain. We probably have different focuses in different parts of the world. I think in Europe there's more agricultural that we use lime for, because again it's also fertilizer for plants and things of that nature. So the end markets aren't entirely the same. I mean, the steel stuff is global. Yeah. But honestly, if you think about just those countries you're talking about, there's very different ways of doing business in every one of those places. True. And so the business looks very different, I think, in every one of those places.
Different regulatory environments and the like.
That's certainly part of it. I think just even culture, like how you deal with customers, what customers' expectations are. I'll give you a good example, since this is the green podcast. I think in the U.S., and it's changing, but we have a view on sustainability, ESG type stuff, environmental concerns. I think people are certainly more aware than they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. In Europe, I think people are pretty much
been there.
I think they have a different focus, right? They're more, and look, some of it is because they just have a different way of handling these things. In the U.S., we like to do things. Voluntarily. Right. It seems to me you want corporations and companies to be good citizens. Right. So you want them to do the right things because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. It's a expectation.
Yes.
But don't Don't force me to do.
Correct.
Right.
And that's the U.S. mentality from our founding, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, we'll get there. We think we're smart people. We think we're reasonable people. Just don't force us.
Just
to be
don't
there.
force us there.
And in Europe, they have no problem with that force piece of it.
What's that? Like, no, is Pittsburgh kind of your North American HQ?
Yes.
Okay.
For sure.
So what's that look like for you guys from a business sense in terms of the work that you're doing here in North America, out of Pittsburgh, versus Europe and other continents? Like just the communication, like what's that like for you with your colleagues and having your nose above the parapet, so to speak, to kind of see what's coming on the horizon?
Well, look, I think in my new role, and I've been in this role for about 18 months, I certainly work more with our European counterparts. My role in sustainability in North America means I'm working more with people in Europe who globally head our sustainability program. And to be honest, I don't know. It's and maybe this is because of my background in the law. I've done lots of cross-border deals. I work with lawyers in different offices at my firm. Working with people across the ocean isn't. It's like second nature to me.
Yeah.
So I find it pretty easy. We have so many easy ways to communicate with folks. It really doesn't. It's just.
Technologically speaking,
So I mean, we've got teams. Everybody uses something different, but for us, I can press one button, and there's my, my effectively my counterpart in Europe, and we're talking, and the 6-hour time difference obviously comes into play, but
that's the most difficult thing.
That is the most challenging piece of it. But otherwise, I mean, it's seamless for the most part. Look, I think one of the things that's the tricky piece here is I think both sides understand what the other's trying to accomplish, but we don't necessarily have the same rules, and so we have to sort of compromise, right?
Yeah.
So, their view is like, hey, why aren't you doing more of this? It's like, well, that's not a requirement where we are. So,
so your European counterparts are understanding of that.
Yes,
mostly. Yeah, they're like, it's the Americans.
Yeah, well, that gets chalked up a lot. Right?
Yeah,
Americans have a reputation for being a little different.
Do you see the same like U.S. to Canada?
No, that's a lot more seamless.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, there's a lot of Canadians that work in our company, and aside from a couple of words that they say that always makes me laugh.
Yeah,
we're they have like the O, right? Like we talk a lot about projects. We have a lot of projects, but they have projects.
Yeah.
But
it's funny when you're with them for a while, like you start saying,
it gets in your head.
Yeah, like 2 weeks later, you're here and like, so we got this project.
Yeah,
and you're
I
like,
actually kind of there's a flatness to the Canadian accent I actually kind of find endearing. I like it.
Yeah, it's catchy.
I'm an accent. I won't do them for the show, but I'm an accent person. I like. I like playing around with accents.
All right, we'll do this.
I'm just gonna do the straight one for the show.
All right. Does just to dive into like the regulatory side, what are things? For you and Carmeuse that you have right now in your sites that you're evaluating, you're knee deep in, and then also, the other side of that is, we have a lot of kind of business folks that listen in, on the sustainability side.
Sure.
What are things that, you're kind of see up ahead, like that you're preparing for?
So in Europe, there's something called the corporate I got to get this right. It's CSRD, Corporate Social Responsibility Directive.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on the exact letters. And this is an EU program, and it's interesting because it's not a set of requirements that you have, like things you have to hit. It's disclosure requirements about your business, and but they're auditable. So that's what makes it different in Europe. So this isn't like, hey, we're telling you about how we do sustainability. It's like, here are things that we've identified as important for us from a sustainability perspective. Here's how we measure them, and now every year we're going to report on that measurement.
Is it self-selective?
Well, there's pieces of it, right? So this is the most interesting. As a lawyer, actually, I find sort of European practice interesting because they actually give you quite a bit of space to figure this stuff out on your own. So it's not fully self-selective because they give you criteria that you're supposed to evaluate. But yes, there's a process where you say, okay, what's important? Yes, there's a process. What's important? What's important to our business? And then it doesn't stop there. You have to talk to stakeholders, right? That's the key sort of terminology, right? So it's customers, It's our employees. Anybody that sort of interacts with our company also has to sort of go through this. It's kind of a survey process, but the idea is to sort of dialogue with these different stakeholders and figure out, okay, you think this is important. What do they think is important about your business and how it impacts the world, how the world impacts the company? And then you come up with these sort of metrics, and then you decide what you're going to measure on the back of that.
Interesting.
And we have, and it's a long process. The first, for us, we have some reporting obligations starting in 2026. But I mean, look at the calendar, right? It's 2 years in advance.
Right around the corner.
But we're planning, because first you have to figure out what are we going to measure, and then you have to measure it, all of which in order to be able to report by a certain date.
And so for you guys, that's starting in Europe, or is that going company-wide?
It's Europe, but it's a European rule.
Yeah.
But the rule isn't limited to Europe. So in order to comply with it there, you're a global company, you have to globally comply with the regulation.
Okay.
So it's funny you say that, because my role in all of this has been somewhat to be the liaison. So what I'm trying to do
is... US.
Yeah. So because people here, that's not our rule. They go, well, we don't have to follow that. It's a European thing. Well, but we're a European company, so some of this stuff matters for us. And so having to be that liaison and go, okay, well, here's what we need to do to comply with that rule.
Yeah.
And make sure people understand, like, this isn't for fun. It's not, it's a real thing. And for me, what my challenge really is, and it always is when it comes to regulation, I think people think of it as it's a negative, and I get it. There's a cost component to doing these things.
For any type of regulation.
Anything. I've tried, probably medium successful. I'll keep working on it.
Yeah.
But and maybe you can help me sort of hone my pitch. But what I'm trying to focus on is, yes, there's a cost to it. But what you don't realize is that if you actually do these things, the benefit, which may be hard to measure today, is actually there. Right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to strengthen your business. You're going to become more competitive. Your people are going to be happier. And maybe you can't see that necessarily on the balance sheet or the P&L statement today, but it's there.
It's there. It's embedded.
Yes.
I think that's fascinating. Like we're going through the same process of, of basically starting to build our data platform.
Yeah.
And it's been really interesting. We're getting ready to publish our first ESG report, which covers 2023 activities, and here we are in like the middle of 2024. So it just goes to show you like how difficult it is to get everything together and aligned, particularly for the first one. But the thing that's been striking to me is once you start measuring things and telling people that you're going to measure them, because I'm with you, this is like the same hope that I have. It improves your communications with them.
Yeah.
Whether that's, fleet and fuel data or safety. Safety data is a big one in the construction industry.
Totally.
Then you're starting to find out what the language of the business is.
Yes.
And there's a certain amount of interpretation that you have to do between the language of business and the language of sustainability.
Yes.
Right? And that's kind of where we're at, right?
Yeah. In other words, you're convincing people we've kind of done this all along.
Yeah.
We just haven't thought about it in this way.
And like you said, like the stakeholder questioning,
Big time.
That's just good business.
It is.
And or good human resource management, or talking to the folks that are running the business for you and getting their insights, or talking to your customers and seeing like how well did we do that? Did we drop the ball there? Like how can we get better?
For sure.
And so it starts to become like this continuous improvement process, called sustainability in some regards.
Yeah, and look, people, it's interesting. I mean, we're having these conversations anyway, and so, I try to focus people on that fact. Like, you're already talking to your customers. You just didn't think to ask them this question.
Yeah.
But it's not like these communications aren't there. I mean, we obviously have to communicate with them all the time. But if you ask them a question about, hey, what do you think about how we're doing as far as our carbon footprint, right?
Yeah.
That opens an avenue for discussion because, by the way, they're dealing with this stuff too.
Yeah.
Depending on the kind of company they are, if they're international, I mean, every company's dealing with this, even if they're just domestic and they're small. Everyone's dealing with it. So you open that door, and look, my hope is, and same thing in doing a show like this, the hope is that the more you communicate, the better you get a sense for what best practices are, how you can learn from others. I mean, to me, the sharing is a big piece of it.
It was interesting. Just the other day, we had, Thursday, we had, for the first time, our financial partners summit. We're a young company, relatively speaking, here in the U.S., and together with the acquisition of Fay Construction, which has been based in Pittsburgh for 75 years. And it was funny. I was facilitating a panel, and there was questions for our CEO and for our chief operations officer and CFO, and then one of the partners from BMO, Bank of Montreal. She noticed in a slide that I had the UN Sustainable Development Goals.
Yes.
And she asked me a question about that, and my first reaction was like, well, thank you.
Yeah. I actually paid attention.
Yeah, thanks for asking me. I really appreciate that. But it was interesting in the conversation that we had afterwards. One of the things that BMO's doing with that information, that stakeholder information, right, is using it to start to guide product development.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and so thinking in terms of investment, they're trying to back into the KPIs and everything, but how can we make our products serve the customers that are doing this type of measurement, this type of engagement?
Yeah, look, BMO is obviously Canadian, but that's the American way. When you take any kind of, potential barrier and turn that into a money-making opportunity, that's America.
That's it. That's how you do it.
That's what we do.
She's from Chicago, so
I get
it. It's coming. Headquartered in Montreal, I guess, but that's coming from Chicago.
Yeah, that makes sense.
On the other side of the regulatory space, are you seeing things here domestically or in North America, focusing on the U.S., I guess, that, not that kind of European driver, but either regulatory or investments that are starting to kind of guide some of your decisions?
Yeah, I mean, so in the U.S., we have the SEC is starting to take some action here, but for us, that's...
Because they're private.
We're very fortunate. We don't have to deal with some of those rules. And look, I say fortunate. I mean, I think if you look at those rules and sort of the European regulations, I think there has to be a way to thread the needle so you're not doing duplicative work.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure it would be that big of a burden. But for us, it's less on the regulatory side, at least in the U.S. Canada's different. They have carbon rules. To us, I think our company is just really cognizant and focused on the business opportunity behind some of the sort of ESG type stuff, carbon capture being one of them.
Yeah.
We talked about that last time, so I don't want to go into it. But I mean, that's a huge part of what we think some of the technology we're developing, some of our products can be used to actually be the solution in that area. Obviously everybody wants to be that solution, right?
Yeah.
So there's this, it's kind of cool because you're watching, it's almost like if you see those shows on the History Channel, like the ones where
Who Built America?
Yeah, the car ones, and you got the Dodge brothers over here in Chevrolet. Well, you've got a similar thing happening with these technologies around capture. Who's going to be the one
who's going to be
develops
first?
VHS versus the beta version of it,
Yeah.
And now I think the answer is going to be, there isn't going to be a VHS version. I think there's going to be a lot of different ways that we do this. And so everybody's going to be able to
one
participate.
invention kind of builds on the other.
For sure. There's been improvements throughout the process. So for us, the focus is, to be more sort of leading than it is kind of going, okay, well, here's a regulatory framework. We have to comply with that.
Do you see growth opportunities too, or positioning opportunities from the customer-led side? Not so much that it's regulatory, but that you have a customer, whether it's water treatment or in the highway building space or any of those customers we talked about early on, they're saying hey, could you guys do this?
Yeah, I think yes, but I think it's a longer lead time. So for example, I think if you can make a line product that you could sort of say, package it. This is less carbon intensive. Green carbon. You hear green steel, right? This idea that, okay, well, this was created in a way that used a different fuel source or whatever, and so the footprint to make this particular ton is less than that one over there. Is there a value you could affix to that and somehow make more for that product? And I think over time, again, as people see that this is important, the more important it becomes, I think that becomes an easier sell. I think when everyone is doing it, it becomes an easier sell because then everybody's sort of
It's standard
competing with a
practice.
similar product. I think where you have cost concerns, I think sometimes now that's probably harder. So to me on that side, it's probably a longer lead time, but it's always there. You have to.
It's interesting to me too. I used to think about this from the more so now, like coming from the public sector, but looking back, how much they can drive procurement decisions and don't.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of trying to encourage better environmental, social outcomes vis-a-vis procurement versus regulatory.
Sure.
Like it's something that becomes more transactional, but also quicker to implement, I think.
And look, to give the government credit, I think they're trying the carrot approach, right? There's a lot of money out there, and that's the carrot. So this to me is another example of a carrot versus the stick, which is the regulation.
Yeah, the regulation is good for frameworks and structures.
That's the stick, exactly.
But if the real carrot, you got to buy.
Yeah,
I think that's it. Two other questions I was just thinking about. I want to pivot in a second, but before I do, on the data side, how easy, how difficult, what are some of the challenges that you guys are running into?
Technology is always a challenge. What you realize is you have a lot of different systems you've developed over the years.
Yeah.
Is there like one overarching one, or there are gaps? So that was a big piece of what our most recent sort of exercise is. It's a gap analysis. Like where do we have this information, but is it readily available so that we can put in a spreadsheet or report on it?
Yeah.
So to me, like the technology and the differing technologies for how we track stuff probably been the biggest barrier. Like we have to figure out
because one thing's over here and other things over there.
So and look, technology moves so fast. We're constantly changing systems, always looking at ways to improve. I think that'll be part of this process as well. But there's been very few times in the last year that we've been doing this exercise where someone said we just don't have that anywhere, or we don't track that, or we don't think about that. We do. It's just how do we grab it?
How do you extract it
quickly? So
which
that
is
we can report on
which
it.
is ironic for a mining company.
Yeah.
Like how do you?
We're good at that part. We're good at that.
Maybe you should get like the mining guys on the data team.
Yeah,
And be like,
exactly.
wow, this is clearly.
Well, they
what
use
you need to do.
explosives there. I don't know. I'm not sure we should use that on the data world, but we could try.
Fair enough. Like just a deep charge. I think that the data side is that one. We've seen it with like simple stuff like utility data.
Yes.
That we have, construction trailers here, and here, and then all of a sudden you discover that you had another one, and it's getting that data system to talk to one another.
Yes,
is I think big, and then figuring out like what's your target then?
Yeah.
Like what are you going to do with that information?
Well, right.
That becomes big. You mentioned surveying, and I wanted to pivot the conversation a little bit away from regulatory to, more like the conversation. The social side, the people side. When you talk to your people at Carmeuse, and here I think in the U.S. North America we can focus in on. What are some of the things that you see that they want to see?
Yeah.
What's that going?
What I think it always surprises us is that when you talk to people that work at the company, sustainability is actually a huge thing on people's mind, particularly as you get to younger generations in your workforce. It's a huge factor for why they pick where they work, how they feel about the work that they do.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to pick on my generation. It wasn't part of like the lexicon growing up.
Yeah.
So we just, we think about sort of our success based on like our titles or like what's your salary or something.
Yeah.
That's a Gen X approach to life.
Yep.
That's not the way the current generation is seeing things. And I think when we do surveys or we reach out to people, I think we're really somewhat surprised. Maybe we shouldn't be, and certainly not anymore, but that there really is, that this is something that drives people and how they feel about where they work and how they feel about whether they want to continue working there.
Yeah.
And so they're focused on it. What I find the next answer is we don't know what to do with that. Like in other words, yeah, we'd love to help. We think sustainability is a great goal.
Yeah.
What can I do? Because nobody knows.
What
So
can you do as an employee?
in general, yes. But yes, and to start with that, like, is there something that we can do to help the company reach these goals? And, one of the things that we've tried to do is to highlight different, and a lot of it is the S piece of it, but we have something we call our sustainability journey. And we try to highlight because we have so many different sites, so many different people throughout the world, and they're all doing different things in their local communities. And we try to highlight that and then publish it so that the whole company can see what's happening, for example, in one of our sites in Indiana or Ohio.
What are some examples?
Yeah, so one that I was going to say, the one that I think it's cool, but and it's recent. It's we have a monarch butterfly project, and and my VP of HR, this is near and dear to our heart. She loves butterflies. I think all insects are creepy and gross. Even butterflies, by the way. I'm not. They're disgusting. Whatever. That's just me. But people love them. And so at one of our sites, we actually had a project where they were planting milkweed. Apparently, that's what monarch butterflies eat. If I was a butterfly, I'd be like, yeah, milkweed, great.
My wife, conversely,
does she know this? You're a big milkweed person?
No, she's allergic to it.
No.
Oh, yeah.
So she hates butterflies too.
She likes bees.
She's anti-monarch butterfly.
Anti-milkweed.
Good. I am too.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
But anyways.
But so we thought it was a great idea. We go, okay, well, how do we get this? So we sort of spread the word. Hey, this is what they're doing over there. And then we sort of took it one step further. Go, how do we get other people? Because everyone goes, that's cool. I want to do that. We love butterflies. We're not like Nick.
We're not like Nick.
So what we did was we bought thousands of packets of seeds, Carmeuse labeled, with butterflies on them, and we mailed them to every single employee in the company.
Really?
Yeah. Go home in your home garden, plant some milkweed. Enjoy the butterflies.
Except for the urban
And
household.
honestly, it's one of those kinds of things where it seems so silly. By the way, you know how much a pack of seeds costs? It's nothing.
Yeah.
Even if you want to logo, brand it, it doesn't matter. It's cheap.
Right.
But that's not the point. The point is you're getting everybody in and it's kind of cool in a world where not everybody's in corporate, right? We're dispersed throughout the country. But we could all kind of connect to this thing,
right?
Where so they sent me a seed packet in corporate, I can go plant this, and now, the hope would be as these things sprout and you get the butterflies in your garden, we share pictures. We have our own internal social media kind of network.
Interesting.
People will share hey, look, I planted this and I've got a butterfly garden.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you're getting employees engaged. You're trying. You're doing some good for the environment. Do you guys do, on that CSR side, do you have a corporate philanthropy, or how are you structuring that?
We do a lot. We have a lot of different layers of corporate philanthropy, I should say. So, for example, Carmeuse has its own foundation. The family has a foundation. Carmeuse, I think it's just called the Carmeuse Foundation. I'm not sure there's anything else to it. And they will donate money to different organizations that are sort of key partners to us. Some of the ones that we've been involved with, Urban Impact here in Pittsburgh, as an example. Junior Achievement is one that we've been involved with quite a bit at Carmeuse. So we do that. But in addition to that, in corporate, and I'd have to check what some of the sites do, but we have a monthly charity that we sponsor. And when I say we, it's actually an employee. So the employees get to basically make a request at the beginning of the year. Can I have one of the months for a charity that's important to me? We actually have one. It's the Young People's Orchestra. I don't know the full title. I'll get in trouble because the person who I hired a couple months ago is the one who's sponsoring this one. So she might be pissed at me, but it's okay. But that person gets to then reach out to the other employees and say, hey, this is the charity for the month.
Here's a young
We
person's
usually
orchestra,
do a lunch and learn, so it goes beyond just the email. There's hey, come to this free luncheon on Wednesday and hear about the organization, and then you could decide if you want to contribute. Every month, people do. Yeah. And there's usually an accounting, hey, thanks, the Pittsburgh office raised X amount of dollars this month. Terrific. My guess is, it's well in the six figures every year.
Wow.
Yeah, I would bet.
That's a significant impact too, because then you're getting to see another part of Pittsburgh,
for sure,
right? A community organization or a different type of charitable activity.
Absolutely.
The employee gets the ability to kind of lead, so it's kind of a leadership development activity also. And then you might bring some fellow travelers along the way.
Oh, for sure.
also.
And look, this is one thing that Carmeuse is good at. It's weird because we're an old mining company, and you would think, okay, you can kind of have a picture in your head. It's such stodgy kind of, like the Flintstones or something, right? Right? It's not like that, and I wouldn't say that we're a startup or like an internet.com kind of thing, but there is a mentality, we call it the fish philosophy, of having fun and doing things at work that sort of bring you joy. And we're actually pretty good at this one. So, in addition to sort of the charity piece of it and getting people, because you're right, if I'm an employee and I get to promote my charity and raise that money for my coworkers,
which a lot of times, like,
that makes you feel good.
It makes you feel good, and a lot of times those types of charitable connections are personal connections.
Oh, almost inevitably. So you learn about your coworkers too.
Yeah.
Right? Through the different organizations, you find that, they have somebody in their family that's struggling with this or whatever. So it does bring people together.
And you have somebody in your family that's
Correct.
struggling with
Oh, yeah. And then
that's
right. Absolutely. And so we do that well. I think that's just one piece of it. So, one of the other things that we've done on the people side, it's kind of similar. We have Wednesday lunches now. We have a hybrid work schedule, right? So since we've kind of been coming out of the post-pandemic world, we never fully went back, right?
Okay.
I think there was an idea that, hey, this idea of sort of hybrid, it's really part of the S thing, right? Mm-hmm. People felt good about that. They could balance things a little bit better. Work-life balance was achieved.
Yep.
Work wasn't slipping. So I think a lot of companies have made this decision. Helps with recruiting, but I think really just makes people feel like, hey, the company trusts that I'm going to get my stuff done.
Right.
And allow me to have some independence and flexibility. It's great.
But you also have that home base to go to.
Oh, for sure.
To connect and create.
And we try to, in order to bring that connection, we have lunches every Wednesday.
Okay.
And what we've done more recently, again, because we realized, everybody comes together on Wednesdays. Mondays it's often dead. Sometimes a random Thursday, no one's in the office. But Wednesdays tend to be pretty crowded.
Pretty hopping.
Because free pizza. But it's not always free pizza. So people, and it's not my idea, so I won't take credit for it, but people smarter than me thought, well, if we're already getting people here, let's find another way to connect. So we've hosted, lunches that focus on different people that we have. So we have, several employees from India. So we had like an Indian lunch, and they brought in different foods from their culture and shared. And we just did this last week with folks that we have from Venezuela and Colombia. We made arepas, right?
Oh, okay.
So we're trying to expand from the idea of free pizza to how do we else connect with our people?
Arepas.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah.
I couldn't make one though. I don't even like saying it because it's a tough word.
It's a tough word.
It's a tough word.
So, well, this is awesome, Nick. One final question for you before we wrap up is just, what's up ahead for you? What are some things that are around the corner that got your eye? And
so many things. It's honestly coming at me at a blast. I think so. For me, it's obviously the CSRD stuff is the number one priority because we have a deadline. Two is seeing how the sort of carbon capture takes off. In some fashion, we're going to be involved in this, and we're still in that sort of early stage where it's like, what's it going to look like? And then lastly, for me, honestly, I feel fortunate in this new role to be able to I can go to plants now for no reason, really. It's like, hey, I'm on the leadership team. I want to see what people are doing in this site.
To get out.
No one's going to say like, no.
Yeah.
They encourage it. And so for me, it's going to be just connecting with people and doing more of that if I can, as much as I can in the next 12 months.
That's terrific. That's a great place to end right there.
Yeah,
connecting
great.
with people.
Yeah, I love it.
Nick Bonarrigo from Carmeuse, thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, appreciate
we hope
it.
to have you back again to check in on you and the great work that Carmeuse is doing.
Before we go, speaking of data, do you guys track like how many people watch this or what?
Thousands.
Millions. Maybe.
Someday.
One day.
When I'm in that chair. That's exactly it. We have a great audience, and to that point, be sure to share this with
absolutely
all your coworkers, and we'll just add to those numbers.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for listening in to the Green Voice podcast. Thank you to the team here at the Center for Media Innovation at Point Park. I'm your host, Grant Ervin from S&B USA. Have a great day, and thanks, Nick, once again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Listen in, and we'll check you out next time on The Green Voice.